everybody.
Hello, I'm here in the Performing Arts Center. Can you introduce yourself?
Yeah, my name's John Chakowski. I am the technical director here at the Performing Arts Center at Moyne College, and our main theater is the Jesuit Theater.
Thank you so much for meeting with us today, John. What we'd like to do is get a little sense of what this theater space is like. Can you take us in, and as we go, I'll ask you some questions along the way? Does
Sure
that seem reasonable?
Yeah, that sounds great.
When was this building built?
So the building broke ground, I do believe, in '98, and then it opened in 1999. So it's about 20 years old, a little over 20 years old now.
Great. And were there ever any renovations to it at all?
No, not major renovations. However, there were some big changes when the building was built due to the Labor Day storm, if any of you know that storm or have heard of it, with parts of the building knocked down and then had to reconfigure and think about how the building was built. So it's a little smaller than it was originally intended, but it's a really great setup.
Great. Can you take us into the theater, and as we go, maybe answer some more questions about the space itself? How many seats are in this theater, John?
So the theater itself seats around 200, but it really depends on the seating configuration because this is a black box theater. Which means we can arrange the seats in any way, shape, or form we would like. So 200 is about the max, a little over 200, but then it can certainly shrink down depending on the seating arrangements as well.
Great. How do we get to the theater?
So we can go this way, around the back of the seats. We're behind the seats right now. So you come in through the main doors and we have to walk around them, all these black curtains surrounding us. And then into our theater space. So you actually walk onto the stage itself down below, and then there's all this raked seating. And this we call our traditional seating arrangement, mainly because we've got a rep plot of lights and sound and video for this configuration as far as the seating goes. So 90% of the time it's going to be in this seating arrangement. However, being a black box theater, we do have the capabilities to move seating all around this space. It's one big black box. So essentially you've got two walls on either side, two walls on the other side, and a ceiling, a box basically. And it's usually painted black. Ours is kind of more of a charcoaly gray. It's very pretty though, I like it.
Can we go up into the audience, up with the seats, and then look at the stage? Because we have some more questions for you here. On the tour sheet, John, at other theaters we've gone to, it says, what is the size of the proscenium opening? And with the black box, is there normally a proscenium?
No, so we don't traditionally have a proscenium opening in a black box. Just those walls on either side of the stage and then a big open space typically. So we don't have that fourth wall of separation in a black box. The audience is really meant to be invited into the space in more of an immersive environment. I say that, however, in this space and the current show we have set up, we do have a proscenium set up for the show. So it's a fake proscenium that we've built specifically for past shows, and then we've reused it again. So I could say that it was built for this show.
Okay, so I'm going to swing around to the back row so that we can see that. Try not to make everybody too dizzy. I'm walking up all the rows here. I noticed that these chairs look like they're individual chairs. They're different than those other theater seats that we've seen. And so you can take those away. Yeah. In this proscenium, John, how big would you say that is? How wide is it from side to side?
So if you're going, and we typically measure from the balcony that you guys probably see on the side there, that purple railing, all the way to the other purple railing on the other side, that's 40 feet wide. So the width of our theater is 40 feet. And then it tucks underneath a little bit, and we've got the balcony up top. But I would say our theater's stage space is 40 feet wide.
And how high would you say it is from the floor up?
So the floor, from the stage floor all the way to the bottom of the grid, is 21 feet tall.
Okay, so there again, like those other theaters, we're about 2 to 1 width to height. That's an interesting thing. Hadn't realized that they're all that.
Yeah, double in width what they are in height.
So you don't really have a traditional plaster line, which is something we've talked about in other theater spaces.
No, our plaster line is flexible. So depending on the set and different legs that are into place and how deep you put things, we can add chairs in. It's really, we don't have a set plaster line.
So, and could you review for us again what the purpose of the plaster line is, John? What's that doing? Why do TDs, why do theater people need to know?
Yeah, so the plaster line is built in a traditional proscenium style theater to separate the audience from the stage, right? So for a TD, as they're building their sets, they're going to take the measurement of their plaster line and put all of their set into place on the stage off of that plaster line. It's an important line as far as sightlines in the theater go, which if you remember sightlines, if you sit in one of the extreme seats on either side and look sideways in, that'll help determine what you can and can't see on the stage because of that plaster line.
And we talked in class before with drawings, with ground plans and what have you, about center line also. When we were doing our other tours, we didn't talk about a center line, but that's the other reference point, isn't it, to help TDs get the set in place properly in a space?
Correct.
Why would you? What's the point of the center line then?
Yeah, so center line is your just as it says in its the word itself, right? That's the center of the stage between stage left and stage right. Okay, so plaster line, if you think about it, is always upstage to downstage. Mm-hmm. And your center line is the center of stage left to right. Okay.
Gotcha. So that gives you a kind of an X and a Y axis.
Correct.
So that you can lay out your stage floor.
Yep.
Probably because there's so many different walls and measurements. How deep is the space, John? We talked at the Landmark and Syracuse stage about how far it is from the audience to the back wall. What's that distance in here?
Yeah, and again, this is a black box theater, so that depth can also change depending on the seating arrangement. However, in our traditional seating arrangement that we have set up now, from the front row all the way back behind this main drape that you see here to the cyc in the back there, or the back wall, is going to be 30 feet deep.
So that's very similar to Syracuse stage, from their plaster line to their back wall.
Correct. You got about 30 feet there.
Normally, this black box theater doesn't have a proscenium, but here sits one nevertheless. I was thinking we could go down and get a little closer to it to take a look at it. And this one looks like it's pretty ornate, like maybe imitating or trying to get a little closer to what the landmark is like. At Syracuse stage, it seemed like they didn't have anything decorative or...
No, it was very black. You don't want to see it. It's not about the theater itself. Instead, it's more of a modern take on theater, and it's all about the action taking place on the stage. One other thing, as a TD, what I will say, because this space is so flexible, and it's oftentimes hard to determine where a plaster line is within the space, if you point the camera up and take a look at our grid that we have, we have a high tension grid for all of our lighting up top, so anybody can walk right on top there. But if you look at the main steel that's up there, all of those grid panels, the steel at the center of the steel to the center of the next steel is all at 6 foot 6-foot centers on those seals.
Okay.
So a lot of times I will take my measurements off of the grid because I know that is all square. So I'll put a laser on the floor and shoot it up to determine where things are going to sit.
Okay. So let's take a look at this proscenium. I'm really kind of intrigued by this because you say in this black box we don't normally have one, and I take it you don't normally have a drape here either.
No, we don't.
It looks gold and pretty ornate, John.
It is.
And
it was all painted and designed when it was built that way. And then if you come around the backside, if you
wow,
look
it's pretty dark back here.
Can you see there? It's all portions of steel, and it's really all hollow.
Yeah.
So the whole thing is really lightweight, and it comes apart into 4 pieces. So there's 2 uprights, and then the top of the proscenium is into 2 pieces, all the way up next to the grid.
Gotcha. So if I come around this way, it suddenly appears and it looks very decorative and looks real solid, but when you're back there, there's not too much to it. That must help to keep the weight down so you can move it more easily and store it.
Oh yeah, we're always looking at weight to strength ratios here. So this guy is certainly built to continue all the way up the 20 feet or so that it goes up to here, staying straight, but it's also light enough that we can maneuver it around. It's not made out of, big timbers of wood that would be extremely heavy to try and lift up.
So you made it out of steel, or the frame back there is steel, and maybe then some light wood and plastic trim, so it looks very real, but it's not. Where would you get trim like that, John?
So pieces of those are all at Home Depot for the most part.
Wow.
I think we may have ordered some, but if you look at, this is a wood piece, and then this piece here is all a composite, so it's basically a plastic, and then you're seeing another piece of Luan here, which actually stretches the whole distance here. So I've got wood, I've got a composite piece, I've got the back paneling, which is just Luan, and then another piece of composite plastic type stuff. And then I do believe I've got a big piece of crown molding here, and then another wood piece at the end to give me a little bit more to bite into.
Gotcha.
So the 2 ends protect it that are being wood, but then everything else composite, which is just a plastic type, so it really keeps it light.
We are backstage. Is it hard to raise that drape so we can see what the space looks like?
The main drape?
Yeah.
No, not at all. That's right behind you here.
Yeah, okay, so
We're
I'm
back up.
I'm gonna back up so I can see what you're doing. You just have a rope?
One single line, and this whole thing Austrians up, so it's all rigged so that there's
Austrians.
I think there's 7 lines going all the way across this that gather this as it goes up.
Okay, and why Austrian, John?
Yeah,
Where's
so
that
we're
mean?
in, again, black box theater. We don't have a fly system, right? We just have our high tension grid here. So we have to come up with other ways of getting the scenery out or bring it sideways as well within this space. We don't have the ability to fly our scenery all the way out. So we deal with a lot of soft type fabrics in here. So big drape that we can then either go to the ceiling with, or stuff that will track to the sides and then just gather at the sides over here. Okay, this will take it all the way out. And if you look at, this is one of the reasons we have this proscenium here for this show, is to hide this main drape when it's out, but also give us that box frame for our set in here.
Some more questions for you, John. Are there traps in this theater?
So we have, we call it a pit here, as opposed to a trap. I'm not sure why. Essentially, it's a big trench that we have right in the middle of our theater. And I don't know if you can see it within the camera, but our trench is 8 feet wide by 32 feet deep. And if you remember, our seats from the front of the seats here all the way to the back wall there
Sorry.
is 30 feet deep. And our trap starts, oh, what is that? Probably about 6 feet up from those. So if our trap is 30 feet or 32 feet deep, it goes beyond our, what we call the back wall back there, because it actually goes and does like a U, and there's a bay behind our cyc. So beyond our 30 feet, it goes into the scene shop. So the great thing about that is we can actually access our pit underneath by going upstage of the cyc, dropping down and coming forward and really popping up anywhere within the 8 feet wide by 32 feet deep section.
So in this show, you probably have some traps that you're using?
We are. Yeah, so we've got one trap that we're using that we built for the show. So, and I've got a platform here that's hiding it right now. But this guy opens up. And if you look at, there's a whole nother platform here with a couple smaller panels in here. And those can actually lift out and remove them. So in the show itself, the platform for the second act is going to be downstage, covering the pit. And then during a part of the show, that platform rolls upstage, and we've got this entranceway into a basement or to the underbelly of the town that's part of the Mad Woman.
So can we see that where you have the trap in the back opened up?
Here, this sound lock doors that separate our scene shop from our theater will be open for the show, and then we'll hang more drapes behind the cyc. If you look at the cyc is back here. So this whole section where we're at behind the cyc here, you won't be able to see it from the audience. However, you can access it from the scene shop, come in, and there's a whole system of railings here and a staircase that then takes us down into the pit. And you go down into the pit, and then it goes all the way down under the stage, the 32 feet or so, and then it pops up. And really the platforms, we can adjust them and move them around however we need to under the stage to have different entrances or exits.
So is there an apron on this stage then, John?
No, we do not have an apron. Black boxes do not have the stage where it opens up into the audience. Instead, you know, we can certainly move the audience around however we need to. However, you're probably looking at the VOM right now, which is a big section of our seating area that is taken out. And this is one of the things that we've been able to utilize as well, which gives us an entrance and an exit out to the house. One of the downfalls of that is you're removing some of the best seats in the theater. You know,
yeah, it looks like it here in the center.
Our paying patrons and we in the arts love our, you know, doing the art, but also at the same time, we still have to make a living. So removing those seats out of the audience certainly takes away a revenue stream. So it's one of the things that the theaters typically have to consider when removing those seats.
Can you tell us a little bit about the wings? We looked at them at Syracuse Stage, and we looked at them at the Landmark Theater, but what do you have in the way of wing space here in a black box?
Yeah, so in the black box here, there's not too much wing space. Things get really, really tight. If you remember, we've got the balcony, what we call our balconies, kind of those aisles either way up top, and those are 4 feet wide. So I've got, aside from my 40 feet worth of stage width, I've got 4 feet underneath the balcony, and then I've got another 4 feet into, we call them bays here, and we can come on over and take a look at them. So right now this curtain line is at the front edge of the balcony. And then I've got 4 feet behind here into this bay. So really I've got about 8 feet deep which isn't a ton of room, especially if you've got any scenery that's on stage and it needs to come off stage. Where do you put it? This is about the width you need to figure on and consider.
In here. The next questions on the sheet, John, are about flying scenery. What type of fly system do you have, and what's the number of line sets, and is it single or double purchase?
Okay, so in a black box theater, we don't have a fly system, like I said before, because we have the high tension grid there. We can't fly anything out, so we've got to do things either the Austrian drape style or roll drop style, where it rolls up on a big cylinder, much like a movie screen that goes up and down would, or track stuff to the side. Okay, the only exception we have in the theater here is really one line set that we use for our psych in the back here.
Oh, it's dark. There's a reason for that, right? So you
Yeah.
don't see all that stuff.
So our psych that we have here, right now it's raised up as high as it can go, and because it's all the way upstage of the catwalk and the high tension grid there, we can actually fly it out probably about 7 feet or so, 7.5 feet maybe max, just so that we can get scenery through from the scene shop into the theater and vice versa, back and forth. And this is our one line set that we're able to fly in and fly out.
Oh.
Right.
So what are you moving there?
So this is technology from theater existence back in the Renaissance, the days of Shakespearean theater, when sailors would come off the ships basically and they didn't want to go out to sea anymore. So they kind of took a foothold in theaters, and they brought a lot of that technology from the ships with them into the theaters as far as rigging things. So we have a system of 3 lines here, much like in the Landmark and Syracuse stage, that go up to a batten that's all the way at the top. So they go up to some pulleys, they go across, one of them goes to a pulley on the close side here, one at the center and one at the far side, and they drop down to a batten. Therefore, when you want to raise and lower the batten, all 3 lines come down and they're attached to one point. Okay, so in Syracuse stage as well as the Landmark, you would see this one connection point on the top of the arbor. Here we don't have that line set. Instead or the arbor system, it travels much more freely, and we mount or counterweight it with sandbags.
So as that goes up, the psych comes in.
Yep.
So you have one line set, and it's single purchase.
Correct. We do have a second line set that doesn't, or it's pretty much the same setup with another rope here, and we use that for tripping the psych. So if you remember, our psych only goes about 7 feet or so, and then it runs into some air conditioning unit on the far side over there. So if I have a unit that needs to get in here that's a lot higher than that, what I'll do is that second line set has a batten on it, and I'll lower that into the bottom of the psych, and I'll tie the bottom of the psych onto that batten, and then I'll raise that batten, and that's called tripping the pipe, because you're taking that whole psych and actually making it into a big U and tripping it up, and that gets it up higher out of the way.
What's the height to the grid, John?
So from the stage deck to the bottom of our grid is right around 21 feet.
Gotcha. Okay. Are there electrics in this theater? Because one of the things that those other stages have are pipes with lights on them. Do you have anything
Yes.
like that?
So they have set line sets dedicated for electrics, right? With cabling on them and everything. Because we don't have a fly system here, we don't have set line sets for electrics. Instead, with the high tension grid and the flexibility of this space, we're really able to put a pipe wherever we need to up top, up on top of the high tension grid, and change the arrangement of our lighting system however we need to for each production, depending on the seating arrangement, the staging arrangement. And then there's dimmers located all over the place up on top of the high tension grid to be able to plug lights in. So
And-
that gives us the most flexibility within the space and not having to worry about specific line sets that are dedicated for electrics.
And how many dimmers? Do you know what basically the number is? Is it
We are right around 280 dimmers, I want to say.
okay? And you have a in-house sound system with a lot of speakers also?
Correct. Yep, we've got right in front of the proscenium is our main line array. So, and you're going to have stage left and stage right. So that'll be main left and main right. And then down at the stage level, I've also got two subwoofers located stage left and stage right, as well as a little speaker on top of those subwoofers that are acting as side fills.
Boy.
So that fills in.
So you have a scene shop on site, a paint shop on site, a prop shop, costume shop.
Correct.
We noticed at the Landmark they don't have those things, that they just
That's a
bring
big
shows
touring
in
house,
ready
yeah.
to go. But Syracuse Stage has those things, lots and lots. Can we go into the scene shop just to
Yeah,
see
come on
what
through.
that's about?
It's the brightest part of the theater, I think.
Yeah, it is very bright in here. That's interesting because this is very similar to Syracuse Stage and the Landmark in that you can get a lot of scenery onto the stage, and it looks like over here you kind of drive up, bring in your supplies or your set, and then you take it and you
Load it right
move it
into
right
the
through
theater.
those doors into the stage space.
Yep, and same thing with Strike. When the set is done and we break everything down on the stage, it all comes through here and you can get shipped right out on the door, whether it's onto the next thing, goes into some kind of a recycling program, or we put it back on our shelves and figure out how to use it again.
So, and you have scenic storage on site and prop storage on site?
We do, so right behind you is
Can we go in there?
a little bit of storage, not a ton. And of course it's filled up right now with everything. We've actually got platforms that normally live where the vom is, so that entrance and exit way out of the seats. Normally there's platforms there and we store some of this stuff underneath there. But if you look in here, we've got a bunch of hardware that we store in here, as well as stock staircases and some furniture items, some more platforms. And then I've got a whole shelving unit full of flat goods. So whether that's a layer of homosote or some masonite, all those 4x8 platforms for building things, as well as some rugs and plastics and all of that. And then on the other side, we've got turntable storage, as well as more platforms, some tables, chairs, flowers, and we're kind of flipping between shows and trying to figure out a spot for everything. So it's a little cluttered, but we make it work.
So the control booth, you have one of those as well?
We do. Yep, control booth, and that was at the back of the theater. There's 3 windows. So the middle window is devoted to stage management. They get a straight-on shot of the stage so that they can see the show and be able to call the show. So they're in charge of calling the assistant stage managers on the stage for any scenic elements that are changing, the lighting cues that happen, as well as the sound cues that happen. And if there's any video components to the shows as well, they'll be calling those. And then on our house right side over here, which would be your left, is going to be the lighting area, and then likewise on the other side is our sound area. So they each get dedicated windows. And anything the stage manager can't see on stage, they have cameras, which we've got one located directly in front of them, which also has infrared capabilities. So if you've got a blackout on stage, the stage manager can still see the stage and see the set and make sure everybody's clear or where they need to be before they call the next cue, and they can see in the dark. And then if there's obstacles obstructing their line of sight, then we'll put additional cameras wherever it need to be, so that the stage manager can see exactly what they need to see to be able to call the show effectively.
So how many dressing rooms do you have?
So dressing rooms, we've got two big dressing room areas, and then that's separated by a bigger costume shop in the middle. And the costume shop has the laundry area, sewing machines, and a costume area for construction, basically, and then a wing that is all separate for being a collegiate setting. We usually have a male side and a female side as far as the dressing rooms go.
How many shows do you do per season, John?
So theatrical performances, we do 3 big main stage productions. So the 3 big theatrical spaces where it's faculty directed and faculty designed, faculty led within this space, although that's changed a little bit within recent years. So the big thing is 3 big shows in here, but then there's also 2 to 3 shows that the students produce up in another smaller theater that we have here as well. But then there's also music concerts that happen. There's dance shows, there's steppers shows, you know, a bunch of film talks that happen here as well. So the place gets really pretty busy. So I would say we do right around 100 events each year.
That you can look online and find out about what things cost to attend the show. So, and the mission statement and the...
Yeah, with the whole virus going around, I don't know if you can get accurate information on box office.
Oh, true.
So
true.
Just a quick plug. Tickets are usually $5, $10, and $15. So $5 for students and Moyne staff and
Gotcha.
faculty, $10 for seniors, and then $15 for the general public.
Do you know what ticket prices are generally? It's like a place like Syracuse Stage off the top of your head. Any guesses?
Ooh, I think it's anywhere from $30 rush tickets or so, or $25, $30 rush tickets to like 100 something.
And if you went to see a show at the Landmark, those prices would vary depending on the show?
Yeah, depending on the show and who's playing. So that could be all over the place. I'm sure I went and saw a ski movie there not too long ago for like $25 this past fall, but I've also gone recently within the past couple of years and spent $85 on a ticket. So.
Wow, so they really do vary. And the last question, John, has to do with staff. How much full-time staff do you have here in terms of both administration and production?
Yeah, so the full-time theater faculty consists of, 5 of us? So costumes, scenic and props, myself, director, and an operations manager. So there's 5 of us that really work on just theater alone. But then that increases when you talk about dance and music and the other programs outside of theater that still happen within this building.
So that's a lot of people for as much as you're doing.
Correct.
Wow. So thank you very much for the tour, and really appreciate it. And
If you've got other questions, feel free to email me or call me.
super.
Text me.
Thanks, John.